It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest, undertaking an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Daily Planet Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and whatever else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm your host, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how's it going?
Doing pretty well, Scott. Looking forward to talking about this multimedia franchise adventure today.
Yeah, me too. And joining us to have this wonderful conversation is the one and only Michael Graup. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Howdy, folks.
You do that every time, but that's not the accent you talk in.
Is that what I do every time?
You
I
go
honestly,
Southern a lot.
I honestly don't remember doing that, and I thought I was being original.
You were not. I'm sorry. I don't want to break it to you, but
Right.
every time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were all set this week for Matt and I to have this really long, in-depth conversation about the world of film on YouTube. And then Sunday night, the Super Bowl came, and Netflix surprised the entire world by announcing that not only would the next Cloverfield movie be showing via its streaming service, but it would be available to watch immediately following the football game. So we decided to put our plans on hold and dive into the Cloverfield Paradox. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week. J.J. Abrams' Cloverfield universe. And I'm looking forward to this, guys. It's going to be a good talk.
I just want to point out that I've been on board the Cloverfield train since before it was popular.
I don't think that's possible.
There was a canceled podcast that we recorded before
I
put it forth as the best disaster movie of all time.
It was not a canceled podcast. It was a corrupted podcast.
Corrupted
Never got
by
aired.
the movie Independence Day. Am I right? Inside joke, I guess.
Yeah, no one gets that. Yeah, we did an episode where we had three disaster movies go head to head, and Independence Day won, and Cloverfield didn't, and then the file got mysteriously corrupted because the world said no.
Because the world is righteous.
And this was before I backed up every single one of the files and recorded via multiple ways, so there was nothing I could do, and that episode never aired. But we're here to make up for that, because not only are we going to talk about the Cloverfield Paradox, we're going to talk about all of Cloverfield. We're going to talk about the previous two movies. We're going to talk about this genre, this universe, I guess, as a thing, and what we like about it and what we don't. And as usual, in all of our review episodes, we're going to be doing a spoiler-free talk about Cloverfield Paradox, and then we're going to move into spoilers as we dive into this movie and frankly, try to figure out what the hell is going on, because that's rough in this movie.
What do you mean, Scott?
It's very clear. It's very clear, the plot of this movie, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to end the show, as always, talking about what we've been watching, and then we'll wrap it up for the week. But first, guys, it's time for some news.
This is Daily Planet News. I didn't like that.
All right.
Oh, have things happened again?
Things continue to happen, Michael, nonstop.
What's happened this time?
Well, as we said on the podcast last week, the Solo trailer was coming, and it is here now. And I thought we'd circle back around on that conversation and talk about the trailer now that we've all seen it. Matt.
Oh, good.
What did
I
you
love
think?
Star Wars.
Matt, what did you think about the Solo trailer?
I think my main comment was that they replaced. I don't know who this actor is, so I'm probably being uncharitable, but they replaced one of the most naturally charismatic actors of all time with somebody whose face is so unmemorable that if you ask yourself right now, does he have eyes? You can't remember, can you?
I'm pretty sure he does.
Michael?
I actually can't remember.
All All right.
I don't know why that works.
Yeah, so the person you're talking about is Alden Ehrenreich, who...
Hayden Christensen?
No.
They brought him back?
Hayden Christensen's face is actually memorable. This is the difference.
Here's the thing. I don't know if either of you guys have seen Hail Caesar.
No, somehow, regrettably.
Yeah, well, Alden Ehrenreich was in Hail Caesar and did a great job. He was this wonderful, charismatic, wonderful, like hilarious actor in that movie. Some say the best part of it. And I think he got cast in this movie off of that performance. And I agree with you guys. I don't... Here's the thing about doing Han Solo. Either you do an impression, and then it's bad because you're trying to do an impression of Harrison Ford, or you don't try to channel Harrison Ford at all, and then it doesn't feel like Han Solo. And I think they chose to go with the latter.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I mean, it was a mistake to make this movie. Let's be frank. Yeah,
and here's my biggest problem with the trailer is the tone is so weird to me. Like, it's like, I know, like, once upon a time this was going to be more of a comedy movie, and then the directors got fired, and Ron Howard stepped in and made a whole new kind of movie. Even though this week he said that the bones of the previous movie are still here, but I don't see it in this trailer. This seems like a very like overly dramatic kind of tone that I don't get. I don't get why you would go for that. Why not go for a silly Han Solo-ish tone?
Well, I don't know. I get kind of like a frivolous action tone from it.
They end it with kind of a gag.
It seems a lot like the third Star Trek movie in the new reboot to me. It's kind of like, oh, and there's like rock music, and they're like and fighting. It's like aliens.
I think the color grading,
like spaceship.
Like it's like a black and gray trailer.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think that's one of the things that makes it seem tonally very serious, even though it does end with a joke, and it does have kind of that like. And I want to get credit for nailing this, by the way, when I said last week, like you're gonna know. I don't remember what I said actually, but I said something about like, is this going to begin with like swelling orchestral strings and someone standing in front of a sunset, or is it going to begin with like a different tone of music and a different like sequence of shots? And it began with like kind of a syncopated drum and like fast cutting shots of like a I don't know different things. And I was like, yes, they're doing the thing where they're saying, oh, it's a different tone, see, because we're opening the trailer differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get like a fun action movie out of this. I get like the conversation between Han Solo and Kira, which is the name of the new girl played by Emilia Clarke, is like, I know who you really are, and it's like superly overdramatic for me.
That's just like typical trailer stuff. Like,
I don't know about that. I disagree that this is like Star Trek Beyond. I think Star Trek Beyond was channeling a much more fun type of attitude than this is channeling. This seems melodramatic to me.
We'll see. It might be. Either way, it looks horrible. I think this is it. I think I'm going to go ahead and make a statement here, fellas, that my boycott of the Star Wars universe begins with the Han Solo movie.
Okay, but you've said this before. You continue.
I've said it speculatively and without commitment, but this is it. This is officially it. With The Last Jedi, at least the trailer looked like they might be doing some interesting things, which they kind of ended up not doing. Hashtag not my Star Wars.
Oh my God. Shut up.
And now with this, I have no hope. I'm out, guys.
That's fine. That's fine.
I mean, I did take like a year to see Rogue One, so I've already shown that I have little attachment to seeing these movies in the theater. I don't know. We'll see what the next trailers look like, I guess. Which I hate to do that. I hate to base my decisions on the trailers, but what other choice do I have?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. This looks bad, but I thought it was always going to look bad, and it doesn't look like it wasn't as. I expected this trailer to just be throwing references at my face, and it didn't do that. So I appreciated that at least.
Okay. All right.
They'll be there.
There were still some references,
I mean,
but yeah.
well, I mean, like, yeah, there was like they're going to show the Millennium Falcon. They're going to show
the Kessel Run.
We don't know that's the
we
Kessel
don't
Run.
know that that's the Kessel Run.
It's the Kessel Run.
I mean, they're going to show Chewie. They're going to show
Everything
Lando.
that they even mentioned about his past, they're going to ram into this movie.
Hey, I have a completely unrelated question. Those dice, were those in the other movies, or is
I
that just
don't-
a thing?
Yes,
I think so, but I don't remember them being like a massive thing.
they were not.
But-
They were
okay.
a prop that hung.
Yeah.
Like the entire point of the dice being in The Last Jedi is so we can show them in this movie and people will know what they are. I guarantee
I
that.
see.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
because
Good
they're
point.
supposed to be the dice that Han won the ship with or something, and
Okay.
That's-
because I never. And were they always there? I definitely never noticed
they were
these
like
tiny dice in the cockpit.
they're very hard to see. But if you look at some of
Okay.
if you look at shots from the first movie, they are there. They're hanging
Okay.
from the ship. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah. Well, that's Solo. It comes out Memorial Day weekend. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic here, guys. I don't want to be like Michael. So I'm trying.
At some point, you just have to realize that they're tricking you.
Especially off of how good The Last Jedi was. To come off a movie that was so good. That was like one of the best Star Wars movies in decades.
Yeah, it's good audio right here.
Yeah, this is great. This is what
Sorry.
people want to hear.
Sorry, I just threw up there on the floor.
We know.
All right, guys. Next item of news. More Star Wars.
Oh, good.
On Tuesday of this week, StarWars.com announced that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creative team behind Game of Thrones, will be writing and producing a new series of Star Wars films, elaborating that these new films will be separate from both the episodic Skywalker saga and the recently announced trilogy being developed by Rian Johnson, writer, director of Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So this was kind of surprising, and I have a few things I wanted to talk to you guys about here before we move on. First, do we think that the team behind Game of Thrones can write good Star Wars films? Matt, what do you think?
No. I mean, okay. I mean, like, honest question. Do we have any evidence that they have created any stories?
They are writers, I'm pretty sure. Novelists, I think.
Okay. Well, I mean, Game of Thrones is the only thing that I'm aware of, and that took a brilliant story, and as soon as they ran out of runway, they drove it into the ditch, as far as I'm concerned, more or less.
Yeah.
So I don't trust them, really, in terms of storytelling.
This is like an unholy fusion of two creatively bankrupt franchises forming a black hole of death.
Oh my God. Michael, stop being so freaky. You're being more melodramatic than the trailer.
It's what it deserves.
Yeah, so I think, Matt, I think that's a good point, because, like, while there were many seasons of Game of Thrones that I thought were rather good, and even though I don't like the writing in the past two seasons, I wouldn't call it a bad show. They were adapting something. They were not creating a world. And I don't know if we've seen their capability to create a new and interesting world that would exist inside the Star Wars universe. So I agree. This is not something that, like, excites me.
Yeah, but like I see why they hired them, because, like, first of all, Game of Thrones is huge and popular and successful, and if it like if you're not us and you just want to watch dragons and sword fighting, then Game of Thrones is actually, like, good. Like our take on Game of Thrones is not the popular take.
That is true.
We are nerds who read the books and think that they are bastardizing something. Whereas most people who watch the show, that's just what the show is, and they like that.
Yeah,
so
but even if I hadn't read the books, I still feel like the last season I would have said, this is just bad writing. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nonsense, but, like,
for sure.
That's what's weird, is like there will be something that is visually awesome, like the scene where, well, okay, we're not supposed to do spoilers, we get in trouble when we do that, but like there were a couple of battles that people were like, oh, this is so awesome, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it is awesome. These are visually awesome set pieces, but they make no sense.
Much like the Transformer movies.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
I think they're a little. I think they're a little better directed than the Transformers movie. The nonsense there, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing, like, I've seen articles all over the internet after this is like, yes, it's finally time for an R-rated Star Wars movie, and no, it's not. Like, just because these guys, like, the whole thing is like, oh, they're gonna put sex in Star Wars now. It's like, okay, first of all, why would they do that? That's like, no. This is just because.
Let's take a movie that would have made $1 billion and cut that by a factor of 5,
right,
or something.
Just for fun, just because adults want an adult quote unquote Star Wars movie, whatever. Right. Yeah, the other thing I want to get to this is how, like, obviously I liked The Last Jedi. Matt, you kind of liked The Last Jedi, and I think we all know how you feel, Michael. But here's the thing: I think they're doing too much Star Wars, and I don't even mean that like one movie a year was already too much, but it seems like we're going beyond that, because now we have a 3-movie trilogy by Rian Johnson. I don't know if the Skywalker saga is going to continue after Episode 9 or not. Probably. Now they've got this series of films, which they're not even saying it's a trilogy. They're just saying a series of films written by Benioff and Weiss. They've also announced on the Hollywood Reporter this week that Disney is working on a few Star Wars TV series for its upcoming streaming service. And we're already seeing diminishing returns in Star Wars. Like, Force Awakens did amazingly. The Last Jedi still did really good, but the graph is in a downward trend. And to just keep pumping stuff into this, I don't know. I feel it's just going to accelerate this downward trend.
Might as well just milk it till it dies. I mean, it's like the Marvel universe where they come out with a few of those every year, right?
Yeah.
I feel like they're probably going to have the same kind of model with Star Wars and just have people be constantly thinking about it.
Yeah, but I don't. Marvel, and like Star Wars. Marvel's huge. I'm not going to say Marvel's not huge, but Star Wars is different. Star Wars is the biggest thing ever, and I like.
But is it better for them monetarily to come out with a new Star Wars movie every like 3 or 4 years and have it be like really good and special, or for them to come out with 2 every year and have them perform like above average at the box office and still make loads of money?
Well, yeah, I mean,
and all the toys and all the other stuff.
Yeah, but I think the toys and stuff is still gonna, like, that's always gonna sell. But I just wonder if we reach like saturation with this stuff so quickly, are they even gonna pull in money at the box office? I mean, like, Marvel is doing 2 movies a year, and they're doing really good. But I like, what is the expectation for a Star Wars movie at the box office? And are they going to be happy with a $700 million movie? Are they going to be happy with a $500 million movie? Like, at what point does this rampant throwing Star Wars at everyone thing actually just kill the series?
I think before too long, because there's this one guy I know who's already started boycotting the movies. And
is it
I
is
think,
it you?
It is. And I think it's good. I mean, like, I felt like the reaction to The Force Awakens was pretty good at first, and then some people kind of changed their minds on it. It was the same with like I think it was the Clone Wars, whatever the last prequel was. Everyone was like, "Oh, that one was good," and then they realized that it wasn't at all. And I feel like they're going to realize here pretty soon that these new movies aren't really that good, and then I don't know what'll happen because I think for a long time people will still be like, well, I have to see it because it's the new Star Wars movie and Star Wars means a lot to me, and Star Wars has been in more people's like childhood than Marvel movies, right? Marvel movies are fairly new for our generation anyway.
Yeah,
there
I
are
mean,
people who've grown up with them now, but
the
Star
amount of
Wars was
people-
like, yeah, Star Wars is like a massive cultural thing, and it's kind of sacred to people. And I wonder if they'll keep watching it once it just becomes transparent garbage.
I don't know. And this is all assuming that it is transparent garbage, which I do not agree with. Even though I haven't liked a lot of the new movies, I would not call them garbage. They're well-made films. I just don't find them.
But I don't. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know about that. I think they've relied a lot on the fact that people already love Star Wars.
Sure.
And I think once people get tired of that, then they need to have something else. And they haven't done that yet. All of the movies have been reliant upon the original series, because they did, The Force Awakens, where they started off with a fairly original cast of characters and everything, but then they ended it by kind of like focusing on Han Solo. And then they did Rogue One, which was obviously just a story from the before, like directly connected to the original trilogy, explaining stuff there. And then they did The Last Jedi, and that was all about Luke Skywalker. And then they did they're doing the Han Solo, and that's all about Han Solo. So they haven't done anything that has diverged from the original series yet.
Yeah,
so
but you could argue that that's all what this is going to be. Like, I mean, Rian Johnson has specifically said that he's going to create a trilogy that has nothing to do with anything that we've seen before, just set in the universe.
Right. And I think that has more hope to it. Like, once someone actually can like realize a new vision without Disney interfering, which I kind of am afraid of, that they'll be like, hey, I noticed you didn't mention Luke Skywalker in this movie.
Yeah. You could almost argue that this is what they had to do. Like, I wonder if there is a world in which the fans would not expect you to return to these characters one last time, or two last times, or like to Disney to move on with Star Wars. I feel like they had to go back to Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and
I think
Princess Leia at least one more time.
I think they felt like they had to, but I think people aren't always aware of what they enjoy the most. And I think what people find more enjoyable is like little subtle connections that they can notice and be like, oh, that was that thing from that other thing, and not have like the whole movie just kind of trying to be a nostalgia mirror.
I actually completely disagree with that. I think the fan reaction to Force Awakens versus The Last Jedi proves that people want more of the same.
No, I don't. I think the problem. Well, I had a lot of problems with The Last Jedi, but I think the reaction of the public to The Last Jedi isn't that like, oh, you did something different. It's that they literally like took a character, like the main character from the first movies, and just kind of like changed him in ways people didn't like. Whereas if they just had new characters, no one would have been as emotionally attached to it. It felt like disrespectful to Star Wars, and I think that's why people got pissed off with it.
Yeah, I don't want to relitigate Star Wars, but we've been talking about this for too long, so let's move on. One last piece of news: the Venom trailer came out this week, guys. The Venom trailer. Matt, you watched the Venom trailer? Maybe.
Yes, I did.
Was that pause a silence of suffering?
No, that was me being gone for like 8 minutes to go soothe the crying baby.
Oh man, you did that so expertly. We were just ranting about Star Wars.
Oh, well, good.
All right, Matt.
Just slid right back in.
Venom.
Venom. I mean, you can't really tell anything from the trailer.
What do you think about the decision to not put Venom in your Venom trailer? That's pretty bold.
Well, I think by doing that and by picking Tom Hardy, it sort of seems like they're going for this is a serious Nolan-esque Venom. I mean, Tom Hardy automatically makes you think of the Nolan movies and the more self-serious tone. It does. Yeah, like I think people were joking that it, like putting out joke synopsises where this is like not actually a superhero movie at all, because it doesn't look like one, right. Basically.
Well, there was all the jokes. There was all the jokes last year about how everything was going to be a stealth Venom prequel, like that Life movie. So it fits that this doesn't seem like a superhero movie at all. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a boring trailer. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but I can't believe this movie's happening. It has so many talented people in it, and I don't know how they got them in this silly Venom movie.
Yeah, I mean, Venom was always 90s cool is here.
It's the easiest way to say it. Yeah, but like the entire character of Venom is based off of how he reflects Spider-Man. So to not put Spider-Man in a Venom movie, we've talked about this before. It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they're going for something different there. I mean, so that's the thing. Venom was in the Raimi Spider-Mans, and that at least kind of made sense, even though they didn't make it a very good movie. But in order to make Venom work in their current, like, is this an MCU movie? I guess is my question. No.
This is Sony by themselves. One of the producers has said that Tom Holland's Spider-Man might appear in it, but then Kevin Feige said no. So I don't know who to believe.
So wait, does Sony and Marvel both own Spider-Man now?
Sony owns Spider-Man. Sony has allowed Marvel to use Spider-Man, but Sony will distribute the standalone Spider-Man films and allow him to exist in the standalone Marvel Studios films.
I see.
Sony still owns all Spider-Man's villains, basically. So they can do whatever they want with Venom without having to ask Marvel for permission.
Gotcha.
Which explains why they're doing this in the first place.
Yeah. Right. I mean, they probably just focus grouped it and decided they could make some money.
Yeah.
So.
But here's I like Tom Hardy as an actor a lot. I think he's very interesting. And I'm probably going to end up seeing this movie just out of some weird curiosity. It's not going to be
exactly
good.
What they want.
Well, I kind of feel the same in that, like, I feel like Tom Hardy would actually hesitate to sign on for just like a garbage superhero movie.
Right.
He's done it before.
Has he? I mean,
as Bane.
I mean,
but
signing on to the sequel to The Dark Knight, one of the most successful movies of all time, is not signing on to a garbage superhero movie. I mean, it turned out to not be good, but
yeah. I mean, it was the worst of the trilogy, but it was going for something at least.
Right. I mean,
like, I think that's the thing about Tom Hardy. He's going to pick something that has something to say.
Right. I think
or
you're
is
right.
at least trying to say it.
Yeah, but this teaser is so kind of weird that you get really no hint at what that is, like what this movie is even going to be.
Yeah.
But it's happening. It's really happening.
I'll probably see it.
Michelle Williams is in this movie. Academy Award winner Michelle Williams is playing the love interest in this movie. Okay, that's Venom. And that's all the news we have for this week. Let's finally talk about the Cloverfield Paradox.
3.
Morning, beautiful.
2.
I'm getting sick of only seeing you on a screen.
1.
Please, God. Be on our side.
Standing by for your go.
Turn that shit on.
Fingers crossed.
It's too late to say you're sorry. How would I know what you do?
What the hell is happening?
Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there.
The Earth. It's gone.
It's big, blue, full of angry people. Keep looking, you'll find it.
My God.
Hooray.
And before we get to this, guys, I wanted to talk to you guys about the other two movies real quick. Let's run through them and see what our general feeling on this universe is before we get into the newest one. So let's start with the original Cloverfield, the 2008 action horror film, directed by Matt Reeves, written by Drew Goddard, produced by J.J. Abrams and his Bad Robot franchise thing, his studio, I guess. This movie kind of started his mystery box thing. Like, no one knew what this movie was about. The trailers were very sneaky. And so that was kind of the start of this whole thing. And Michael, what did you like Cloverfield?
I do like Cloverfield.
Why do you like Cloverfield?
I think many reasons, but one is that this was sort of my first found footage movie. I missed the Blair Witch Project, and then there was kind of a lull, and then I think this was probably the next big found footage movie that came out, and it just worked really well in this. It was like fun in that you were kind of in the middle of this monster attack on New York, which is kind of an interesting concept to be a part of, and it was just the found footage made it very realistic. The characters, it actually like it allowed for the characters to be characterized really, really well. You kind of felt like you were in their friend group and you knew them, and they had interpersonal stuff going on at the same time that the monster was attacking the city. So they managed to like blend in character growth and stuff like that while they were telling this other story. So I just thought it was like a really well put together movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought that it was kind of this character study hidden inside this found footage horror movie, and the strongest part of the movie was the relationship between this couple that had broken up and were brought together by this disaster, which is something that disaster movies do a lot, but I thought it was well constructed in this movie.
Yeah, it was really cool how they started it, like, because the found footage. So the concept was like the main character's brother was filming a surprise party for him, but he was taping over this stuff that but the main character had filmed with this girl who'd been his girlfriend before, and they were getting back together. And it's kind of bookended with just like bits of a nice date they had, basically.
Yeah.
And that is well blended into the story that's going on, and it ends and begins in a cool way.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, what did you think of the original Cloverfield?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I haven't seen it in a really long time, but everything you guys are saying is stuff that I agree with completely. I think that this is one of the best examples of found footage just being the perfect way to tell
like
a story.
Actually using it as an art form, as a style, instead of just using it for the sake of using it.
Yeah, because you can imagine this movie done not found footage, and I actually think I would have not liked it as much.
Yeah, I agree. And this was kind of in the middle of the found footage craze, and which has kind of died out now, I think. But it was one of those that did it smartly. And one of the things I read about this movie at the time was that they really let the actor hold the camera, because they wanted the camera movements to seem like a novice person holding a camera and not a professional cameraman who was lugging around a camera. So they let the actor actually hold it, and they kind of designed the shots to where he would miss the best angles of things. So like the monster is hidden throughout this movie a lot, and it's not because our characters don't see the monster. It's just because the guy holding the camera really sucks at capturing the monster on camera.
And they did that well too, because it was mostly HUD, who was T.J. Miller's character.
Right.
And they even mentioned like during the movie, like, hey, just throw the camera away. And he's like, no, that people got to see it and stuff.
Yeah.
And you kind of believe it because of the way his character's characterized, that he would go to stupid lengths to keep filming.
Yeah, man, I forgot that was T.J. Miller. That hasn't not aged well.
He's kind of hiding behind the camera as like a crutch in the beginning of the movie before anything bad happens, and then I think it just is his life preserver for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that I really liked about this movie that we will talk about when we get to the new movie is that the cause and the reasoning around why this monster is here is unimportant to the story that they're telling and doesn't matter.
It would have ruined it to explain it.
Right, exactly. This is about relationships between friends and loved ones trying to survive a tragedy. The tragedy is backdrop, and that's why it worked well, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we fast forward 6 years, and nothing has happened in the Cloverfield universe. This is just a one-off film. And then suddenly, in February of 2016, it is announced that this movie that we knew was coming out, that was going to be called Valencia, is actually a Cloverfield movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane, directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who was basically a first-time director. He had done like a video game short or something, nothing else. First movie. This movie comes out, shocks everyone, and it was really freaking good, guys. Starring John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Gallagher. A movie that fit the Cloverfield franchise in that no one knew anything about it, and that it was a sci-fi movie that was mostly a character study. And I loved 10 Cloverfield Lane. Michael, what did you think of 10 Cloverfield Lane?
It was great. It was completely different than the first Cloverfield, which was good because the first Cloverfield didn't need a true sequel. but I thought that they successfully kind of like captured kind of this post-apocalyptic feeling, but from a completely different angle, and it's not found footage anymore. It was an amazing new character study where you kind of don't know what's going on, the same as the main character. There's this, she's in this bunker with John Goodman, who is amazing, as this creepy guy that you think might not be creepy, but then he is creepy, and then surprising stuff happens, and it was just a thrill ride.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about this is the Cloverfield name had connotation here. It made you think that maybe stuff was happening because we know there's a Cloverfield monster. So maybe there's Cloverfield monsters running around up above the bunker, but we don't actually know. And that tension, that where you're divided between thinking John Goodman is just a crazy guy, and then John Goodman is actually correct, and he did save your life. Like, it's this wonderful push and pull of tension, and I thought it was such a fantastically crafted movie. Matt, what did you think of 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah, I mean, you're making me want to watch it again, guys, because it has been a while, and it's just a great story. Like, what's funny is that I probably would still love it, even if it weren't, John Goodman at the top of his game and every other actor doing fantastically and, well directed and well paced and just like a masterpiece in a lot of different ways. Just because the story is so strong by itself, which is, something that we sort of forget sometimes. The idea that the story needs to be intrinsically good. Like, you can't you can't prop up a shitty story with good directing.
What I love about both of the movies is that, like, there's all this epic stuff going on in the background that the movies mostly ignore.
Right.
Like, none of the like world ending stuff needed to be happening here, really. I mean, it was kind of like do they actually have to be in this bunker? Is he just lying about what the world is like? Mm-hmm. And really, actually, the only place this movie goes wrong is the ending, where they kind of show too much, and there's like an actual alien that she fights with a Molotov cocktail. Which I felt wasn't the best ending for the movie. It didn't ruin it for me because the rest of it was just so strong. But that wasn't why this movie was cool. It was just that these are like normal people,
right? But
in this great story situation.
And I mean, this is a movie about Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Michelle, who is a person that anytime she's in trouble runs away, and so the movie puts her in a bunker, locks her in a place where she can't run away from her problems anymore, and that allows her to get to a point where she learns not to flee every time things get hard. And I think that in itself is a great story. And I have softened on the ending a little bit. I was right with you the first time I saw it, that I did not like that we got to see what was really going on in the ending. But I do think that there's a moment at the end of this movie where she chooses to go help other people instead of running away. And that is the central conceit of the film. And you needed that moment. So yeah, the ending's not perfect, but I like it for what it was trying to do.
Yeah. What I hope doesn't happen with these movies is that in like a movie or two from now, they have her character meet up with like the girl who survived first Cloverfield and like someone, the girl from the new movie, and then they just try to make it like a unified thing instead of having each movie be a completely new story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, so I mean, we finished this movie and suddenly everyone was really excited about the Cloverfield universe now, because basically J.J. Abrams had created this thing that could be used to highlight new directors who hadn't done a lot of work before, but could tell original, exciting science fiction stories and throw this Cloverfield name on it, which gives it a certain air of credibility, and so allows these smaller science fiction stories that would not normally be told to exist. And that was a really exciting proposition. And we were supposed to get a new movie this year. It was originally titled God Particle, but we kind of knew it was the Cloverfield movie because it was a bad robot movie that it was pretty obvious it was going to be a Cloverfield movie. And then, like I said, on the Super Bowl, it's suddenly announced that no, it's called Cloverfield Paradox, and it's out now, which was very surprising. And everyone, the goodwill that the last two movies had brought up made everyone go to Netflix. And well, see, here's the thing.
Didn't do great.
Here's the thing. Paramount had this movie, and we're going to release it, and then Paramount had a leadership change, and the new president of Paramount was looking at the slate of films that were supposed to come out this year, and basically made decisions about what he thought was worth pushing and spending the money on a wide distribution, and what wasn't. And he looked at this movie and said, "This is not worth the money," and Netflix said, "We'll buy it from you for $50 million. And
holy crap.
And they said, okay. And so Netflix bought it for $50 million, and immediately, and Netflix orchestrated this brilliant Super Bowl ad thing, which turned the hype up, because like they dropped $2 million on an ad during the Super Bowl, which is like 10% of what a normal movie's marketing campaign would be, and got a Super Bowl ad at the most watched thing ever. And then everyone, as soon as the Super Bowl was over, went and watched this movie. So it almost doesn't matter whether it's good or not, because everyone involved with this thing won. But I guess we gotta review this movie. We gotta talk about whether it was good or not.
I don't quite understand how it makes sense from a Netflix business perspective, though, because I mean, unless people subscribe to Netflix specifically to watch the movie,
I guarantee they got at least a few new subscriptions.
Yeah,
based off of
yeah, like this particular thing, I can imagine. You know, okay, you're at your bud's house watching the Super Bowl with them. You see this Cloverfield thing. Everybody has generally good feelings about Cloverfield. So after the game, they switch on the Cloverfield thing, and you are not a Netflix customer, but you see the Netflix experience, and now that worm is in your brain.
Could be,
and, you know, it's a statistical thing. I mean, it is kind of shocking that they would think it was worth $50 million, but
that's what Netflix does. They just throw money at this stuff.
Yeah.
So this is a movie directed by Julius Ona. Once again, a guy who has not really directed a lot of stuff before. This was his first big production. It has a stacked cast. It has Gugu Mbatha-Raw from Black Mirror. She was in the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror. It has David Oyelowo, Daniel Bruhl, John Ortiz, Chris O'Dowd. Like this is a really stacked cast. And this is a bad movie, guys. This is not a good movie.
You think so, Scott?
I do. I really think so. And let's we're not doing spoilers right now. Okay. We're going to get into this in detail. But Matt, why don't you go first? What did you think of the Cloverfield Paradox?
Yeah, unless Michael has a surprise for me, I'm probably going to be the gentlest on this movie, because it had a lot of genuinely creepy parts, and this is probably my whole thing where I systematically go easy on science fiction because I just want there to be more science fiction. But there was a lot of really creepy stuff. It reminded me of a lot of other things that I like, and it reminded me of those things in a good way. I could name them, but maybe I'll save that for the, for the spoiler section, where we can get more specific. But like the whole genre of like creepy shit happening in space and mystery is a really fun genre and appealing. And there are really very few movies that go that direction. And so I was just kind of happy that they were even trying, and I gave them a lot of credit there. Like, again, not to go into spoilers, but like the beginning and the ending were the weakest parts. The middle was actually very successfully creepy to me.
Okay. Okay, we'll maybe get into that in a bit, but I want to hear what Michael has to say. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I also didn't hate it. I think and that might have been different depending on how my expectations were, because I didn't watch the Super Bowl, and I learned that this movie came out like a couple days later, and then I checked all the reviews, and it was just getting like the worst reviews, and I was like, oh, this is going to be, like The Last Jedi all over again. And 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 because of that, I think I ended up not hating it so much because I was expecting it to just be like The Last Airbender bad, like M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender bad, and it wasn't. It was actually like reasonably competent. The characters were like were well characterized. They were kind of set up well. The story wasn't that great. I think that was the weakest part. I also just kind of enjoy science fiction movies on space stations, as that's kind of like a static bonus in how much I appreciate a movie. So I think because I kind of like the genre and I had super low expectations, I thought it was fine. Like, I'm not going to watch it again ever. But it wasn't like making me cringe the whole way through.
Okay. Yeah. I thought this movie was a mess. I thought most of what happens does not make any sense. I think you're absolutely right, Michael, that the story is the worst part. I think it's an absolute, like, just fuck up. I have no, like, the thing about both 10 Cloverfield Lane and this movie were originally different movies. They were screenplays for independent, like, non-related science fiction stories. And then Bad Robot brought them into the Cloverfield universe and had to add scenes for both of them. But I felt like in 10 Cloverfield Lane, the scenes that were added were just kind of separate from the main plot. Like, there was a shot in 10 Cloverfield where we had to see the gas station that's in all the Cloverfield movies, or we had to see the Slusho character that was in all of Bad Robot stuff, that these connecting tissues. But in this movie, it feels like they just slammed it all in there in order to not only make this a Cloverfield movie, but make this the Cloverfield movie that explains the Cloverfield universe, which, as we discussed in the first movie, is not a thing that I think ever needed to be explained. So this is a movie that is both trying to stand on its own as this independent science fiction movie, but also trying to explain why the other two movies were happening. And I just don't care about any of that stuff.
I actually hope that they just drop it and just, like, the next Cloverfield movie, whatever it is, just forgets about this. Because like, this would be like if you tried to, like, have an episode that was like, oh yeah, this is what's actually all of the Twilight Zone episodes are actually the same universe. And you see there was a ancient god who created, it's like, no, stop. These are supposed to be one-offs. They're much better that way. I don't like, what's funny is Abrams should know better, because he's all about the mystery box, and here he goes and tries to show what's in the mystery box, which is always a mistake for him specifically.
It's a mistake he's never learned, but
yeah, that's true.
But yeah, like, I hope what they don't do is now be like, oh, now we've explained it. Now we're going to have a movie where they fight the monsters.
Yeah.
And that's the complete wrong direction. They just need to have all this shit, like, happening to make character stories happen other places. Like, it shouldn't be the conflict. It shouldn't be like man versus giant monsters, the conflict of the movie. Mm-hmm. It should be like man versus man, or man versus nature to some extent.
And the reshoots and the rewrites to make this a Cloverfield movie were so transparently obvious to me. Like, everything with Gugu Mbatha-Raw's Hamilton character's husband back on Earth was very clearly like a reshoot and added in to align this with the Cloverfield universe. Like, the movie, we haven't actually explained the premise of the movie for those that haven't watched it. We keep forgetting to do this, guys. The whole point of this movie is a group of people are up on a space station trying to fire a particle accelerator, which is going to create energy to save the world because we're in an energy crisis. You guys are the scientists. I'm not sure if that checks out.
I mean, not at all, but, you can buy the conceit of it.
Yeah. They didn't explain what they were doing at all. So sure, yeah, there's a way to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the point. They end up firing this thing, and the Earth goes away, and then weird stuff happens on the space station. So that's our premise, and then, for whatever reason, we cut back to Hamilton, the main character's husband, who's on Earth, and weird things are happening on Earth, and we're cutting back to him as he explores these weird things that are happening. And it's this really random side story where he saves a kid and then hangs out in a bunker. Like, it's nonsense and completely irrelevant to the story they're telling. And I think it's all there just so we can say, look, Cloverfield.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a missed opportunity because I thought they were going somewhere else with that, which might be I guess it's a
Yeah, we might have
non-spoiler
to-
because nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happens. Yeah.
But like the little girl he meets shows up after the weird stuff starts, and you think like, oh, this little girl is like from another universe and is evil somehow, but like no, it's just
Nope.
a random little girl.
It's just something we shot for like 5 hours
Yeah.
on the weekend to just plug in holes in this movie.
Right. There's a specific scene I want to reference there, but I'll save that.
Okay. Yeah, and so but the thing is, like, at the same time, as much as I dislike this movie, I think you guys are absolutely right in that there's a lot of good here. Like, these actors are very talented. I really like all what they're doing. I think Chris O'Dowd, who plays Mundy, the comic relief character, basically saves a lot of the scenes in this movie because he's just kind of ridiculous and funny. And I think that works really well. And I am with you that I usually like these space station crew movies where something weird is happening and they're having to fight against it. I liked that movie Life last year. That was the Stealth Venom prequel. That was basically people caught on a space station with a monster and they had to survive. It was very much throwing back to Alien, like very transparently. But this movie does that too. This movie has some very, very transparent Alien references. But that movie was simple and I could at least follow why things were happening. And this movie, I did not. They basically just said, this thing happened, therefore weird things are happening, and we don't have to explain them because they're just all weird things. And then we can do whatever we want, and it doesn't make any sense.
And that's why I think the movie in its current form was not fixable. Because the premise of the movie is that, like, because this weird thing happened, there's no rules. And whenever there's no rules, like, you don't know what is unexpected anymore.
Yeah.
You can't really be surprised and you can't really, like, think of a way out. It's just like, well, if they get out of this, it's just because the script says they should.
I completely agree.
That's a good point because, like, with Event Horizon, which is one of the movies that this is going to be inevitably compared to.
Well, I think it's trying to real bad. That's another one that I think it's trying to copy.
Yeah. But with that movie, it's very clearly the conceit is like, oh, we're opening a portal to hell. We're really, really making sure that you're clear that we're talking about something like a literal hell dimension. And so everything that comes from that is makes sense.
Right.
Like you said, whereas this is just random. It's just random stuff, but that's the thing is that was the only part of the movie that worked for me. So I'm not gonna because it was just like, oh, this is weird. What's gonna happen now? I'm kind of on edge, and a couple of the things that happen in there are pretty weird, and you're like, oh, this is this is clever.
Maybe if there was a pattern to the weirdness, like at some point it's kind of clicks like what exactly happened. And then they kind of like exploit the weirdness to solve it or something. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, oh, the weirdness happens, like random stuff happens, and then random stuff happens.
Yeah. And like which characters are dying and which aren't is random. Like it doesn't, there's no reason for it.
Yeah.
And
right. I know what you're saying because it feels like because it kind of wanted to be a character study, like certain characters deserved to die for their blasphemy or something like that. Mm-hmm. But there was a missed opportunity to like use the deaths. It's just like, no, it's a space station movie where something weird's happening and people die one by one.
Yeah. And that going back to that character study thing, I think we're going to really explore this in the spoilers, but I don't know what this movie is trying to say about its main character. I mean, it's very obvious what she learns throughout the process, but I don't know like specifically how the event led her towards that.
Right.
I mean, like
it's kind of a missed opportunity as well.
Like the other two, like 10 Cloverfield Lane is very transparent about what it is about and how it gets its main character to this point where she has changed and learned something new. I don't see it here.
Yeah, and the first Cloverfield movie was too.
Yeah, I agree with
about,
that. Yeah.
Like appreciating what he had with his friends and his girlfriend.
Yeah, it's almost like she just has to make the decision she makes at that point because
So I think it's time. Let's get into it. Let's get into spoilers. Before we go to spoilers, one last thing. I want to know, before we start to pick this movie apart a little bit, are you guys still excited for what the Cloverfield universe could be? Because we have another movie coming up this year. It's called Overlord. It is supposed to be a supernatural horror film that's set during World War II. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be your worst nightmare, Michael, where we're teaming up the entire movies type thing. It could just be a science fiction movie that it has the Cloverfield name. Can this series survive a dud like this? Because it is a dud. Michael, go first.
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, I didn't really get the feeling that this was a massively popular set of movies to begin with. I mean, the original Cloverfield did pretty well. I don't remember 10 Cloverfield Lane getting a lot of attention from people.
It made, I mean, it didn't like destroy, but it made $75 million, which is in the US, which is pretty good for a small sci-fi movie.
Right. But anyway, I think as long as they don't try to make it one of their big franchises, like as long as they don't try to make this a Marvel or a Star Wars thing where they just try to connect everything to Cloverfield, I think it's still fine. Like as long as each movie is still kind of an independent project by a different director, I think it's still going to be cool and I'm still going to watch them. I just hope they don't buy too much into their own idea of connecting these movies and keep it as like a Twilight Zone kind of deal.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything Michael said. I'll see the next one. You know, the only thing that would make me stop watching these is if there were just several in a row that were bad. You know, like maybe 3 in a row that were really bad, and it gave me the sense that the will behind keeping the franchise actually good had disappeared, and they were just throwing garbage into it to see if it would stick.
Right, like even if the next 3 are really bad, I'm still going to watch them as long as each one is like an independent project, right? Like, because it's not like because not to bring up Star Wars again, but it's quite pretty relevant to the point. Is that like they don't feel like honest movies. They feel like they're exploitive, and they are in a large sense, because it's just like Star Wars makes a lot of money. Star Wars. And right now it doesn't feel like they're doing that with Cloverfield. It still feels like it has integrity, and if each movie belongs to a different person completely, and it's not like the production studio being too heavy-handed, and maybe you brought up a good point, Scott, that they did that here, and they maybe added too many Cloverfield scenes to it. I think it's still fine, but if they keep doing that, or they do that more than they did in this movie, I think it could ruin it.
I think you could even frame this as like, hey, this isn't really a Cloverfield movie. This is a movie that like Netflix bought and they stapled Cloverfield onto it. And so like I actually hold this less against the franchise than I would if this were a movie where they had been like, oh yes, what we need now is a space movie where we show where the monsters come from.
Yeah, so. I think you're right. Yeah, I think they could easily frame it that way. And I think if the only reason this movie matters to the overall Cloverfield series is that it had 2 lines in it that explain where the monsters came from, and then that's it, then I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
As much as I didn't think it was necessary, I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
All right.
And it wasn't really even an explanation.
No. So let's jump into that then. Let's jump into spoilers. So if you've not seen the Cloverfield Paradox yet, stop listening now. All right. What the fuck is going on in this movie? So Go ahead, Matt.
I will agree. Like, even though I was talking about how a lot of the creepy stuff worked for me, it did frustrate me that some of it seems like it's explaining a mystery. Like, for example, so his arm gets eaten by the wall, and then the arm shows up later and then like writes a message which has information that they actually,
where did it get that?
It actually saves them. And it's like, okay, hold on. So wait, so you're implying that like there's an alternate dimension him that can actually feel what his arm is doing and is like, oh, I need to use my arm to give this information to these guys so that they can. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening. It's just a sentient arm that gives them the information for no reason.
I mean, that was a missed maybe way to make the randomness mean something. Like maybe in the parallel universe where this shit is coming from, they're also trying to save stuff and they have to like work together with the other universe somehow. I don't know, but yeah, it didn't make sense. Like, who was it who was? How did the sentient arm? What is it? God?
How did the thing get in the guy's stomach? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
well, that actually made the most sense to me.
Why?
Because it's just like, oh yeah, something happened and they like transported in space, and the worms like happened to get transported like into the same space as his body, and that killed him.
They got transported into his stomach specifically.
Yeah, well, because there was a theme originally of like shit getting transported between the universes in weird places. Like the girl who shows up is like transported into the wall. So sure, yeah, the worms got transported into the guy, and that was pretty unlucky.
but then it gets much worse. Like when the wall eats the guy's arm, that's more obvious that there's like malevolence behind.
Exactly,
and you get more Event Horizon vibes because the ship is trying to kill them basically.
But also save them.
Right? It's like you could almost say that the reason it eats his arm is so that it can send them the message about where the gyroscope is. I mean, that like I'm giving this movie too much credit now.
Yes, but, you are. None of it makes any sense, and so many of the characters are unclear because they're trying to be so mysterious. Like I get what's going on with Daniel Bruhl's character. So there's the German character and the Russian character, and in the alternate universe, he is actually spying and bad. But in this universe, he's good. So he 3D prints a gun from the same thing that prints their bagels.
Uh-huh.
I don't get any of this. I don't understand.
Well, obviously, it's a matter synthesizer, Scott, and you can make whatever you want. But and the worms were obviously affecting his personality.
The worms were doing it. Right. And the gyro thing being in his stomach.
Yeah.
That couldn't have helped.
That thing was huge. How's it fitting inside him?
My biggest complaint in this whole movie, I had two big complaints, one of which is just a technical nitpick, which distracted me severely, and one of which was a character thing, which was much worse, actually. So the technical nitpick is that they're across the solar system from the Earth, and they're going to use a small escape pod to return.
What's wrong with that?
Just going to jump in that escape pod.
Yeah. I think that would actually work, though.
It might work.
As long as you had the trajectory right, you wouldn't have to apply any more fuel.
But it's going to take months.
Yeah. But, you know, they just freeze themselves or whatever.
Like, I mean,
science fiction.
My problem was that the Earth disappeared and they were just on the other side of the sun. Like, they had no other way to tell where they were located in space. They couldn't see anything else.
I mean, it's actually I'm not even sure if they moved. That's what was confusing to me, is did they even move, or did the Earth they moved to a different dimension and the Earth was just out of sync with the orbit? I mean, which is not really believable because the timeline was too similar.
Well, and it's also like almost as if they're on a, like it is their ship, but it isn't their ship because the logs in the ship have changed when they switch dimensions, but the ship in the other dimension had crashed into Earth because we saw that. Yeah. That's why the one girl from the other dimension needed her.
They were in the other dimension, right? Because
But why did the log in the ship change in the different dimension?
Just some of the same weirdness. I mean, the same reason that like the nano machines murder the guy.
Yeah, why did that happen? I don't understand.
I mean,
there was a magnetic field coming from somewhere. Yeah, and that was never explained.
Well, yeah, the magnetic field, but the magnetic field, like I thought what they were doing is that the magnetic field was just going to pull the stuff that he was spraying and like trap him against the wall and crush him or something. But then they like reached out and grabbed him and pulled him back the other way.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why that was happening.
That's the thing. Like all the little like technical nitpicks, I could have forgiven.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they just kind of killed the characters in these pretty random ways that didn't really follow any patterns and were completely unexplained. Just kind of, it was a bad premise.
The character moment that I groaned at was when I literally groaned. Was when the main character, she's told that her family's still alive, her kids are still alive, and then her reaction is immediately like, "Oh, then she's going to buy install a dangerous fuel cell or something, and she's also going to burn her children alive, and the only way to stop this is if I go down there and stop them." And it's like, first of all, that's like far too many logical leaps, and it just completely fell flat for me emotionally.
First of all, just do what you ended up doing and send a message.
Right.
It's just like, hey, if you were going to do this power cell thing, don't do that.
Right.
Okay, that saved me a trip.
Right.
The thing that I don't understand, that whole, like, you're absolutely right, and that's the emotional core of the movie, right? There's this woman who has ran away to space because she feels guilty about killing her children for trying to keep them warm and having the thing accidentally burn them down. But that is your emotional core of the movie. And for some reason, this movie hides that from you until over halfway through the film. Like, I don't understand why what happened to her kids was played as a reveal. It should not have been. Just be upfront about that with your character, because that defines your character.
That should have been the first scene instead of her in the traffic jam with her husband.
Right. Like, define that that's what's happening to her. And then as you and her realize that we're dealing with dimension jumping and she might have the opportunity to see her kids again, that's already in your mind. That emotional core is defined for you so that you suddenly understand why she would want to stay in this world, this world where her kids are still alive.
What if like in the alternate world, her kids were like on the alternate space station? that could have been cool, because like maybe as they were communicating with the other dimension, which was the other way that might have worked to make there be rules between the interdimensional thing, like one of the sides had to give up an important part for the other side or something. And I don't know, there was something there other than for some reason like you thinking it would be a good idea for her to go and intrude upon this other version of the family in this new universe.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting.
They wanted to make it a monster movie, but they made it but they didn't have a monster, so they made just random stuff happen, and that's
why it doesn't work, because the tension is built because you can be like, oh, there was a noise and the monster's in the wall, and you kind of like understand how a monster would work in the sense that like has to be somewhere and it could make noises. Whereas here it's just like, well, at any moment something could come out of the wall and impale him. Or maybe he already has worms inside him.
Yeah.
Which, it's all, that's the thing is, like moment to moment it was successfully creepy, but like I'm flipping through all the like Dead Space. We already talked about Event Horizon.
Alien.
Alien. I'm blanking on the other thing that I was thinking of before, but like the conceit always has to be something that fundamentally it makes sense, and
right. In some ways, it gave me like some Sunrise vibes too.
Yeah, Sunshine, absolutely. Sunshine. Yeah, absolutely.
Sunshine. That's right. Yeah.
I think I think that's what they were going for too. And
so, like just the fact that this movie ends with like, oh yeah, and it's the Cloverfield monster. By the way, like that's awful. It's like, wait, that awful. Was okay, whatever.
Everything that was cutting back to Earth was tension destroying, because the whole thing was, oh my God, Earth is gone. We don't know where we are.
Right.
Of course, they like the whole time I was just like, find the sun. Look at where the sun is, because that will help you figure out where you are. It's the sun. It's really big.
Yeah.
But
it would have been way better of a reveal if they had no idea what was going on Earth, and then the space pod went down to Earth, and they didn't show like a massive monster, but just like shit was destroyed, and they're like, oh no, what happened?
Well, and think like I'm very interested in the central like conceit in this film, which is like both sides are trying to save their planet, and it's their planet. And would you be willing to kill someone else if it means 8 billion people get to live or whatever? And that's really interesting. And that push and pull between the Elizabeth Debicki character and Hamilton of, I want to save my world, well, I want to save mine, would be interesting. And I think it would be so much. So I'm imagining a movie where their space station jumps into that other universe and the other space station is still there, and they're dealing with alternate versions of themselves, and they have the secret, and they're like trying to help each other out, but like betraying each other because they want to care about and like maybe the other people's space station's broken, so they can't fire their thing again, so they want to secretly take it. Like there's room for drama that follows that central core conflict there that just was ignored because we need monsters and the arm from Adam's family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like this movie that you've just described.
Right. There's definitely a better movie here somewhere. But the central story, like we've said, of just the random stuff happening needs to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So getting back to Hamilton, the main character, and what we were hinting at in the non-spoiler section, what is her arc in this film? I don't get it.
It kind of fell flat. I mean, like you said, it's supposed to be about something about like her guilt and her family and moving on or not moving on or something, but it wasn't clear exactly where they were going with it. It's like they came up with kind of a internal historical conflict, but they weren't really sure how to use it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like Gravity in that she ran away to space to escape her problem, and I guess she learns that she should never have left. But the whole Cloverfield monster destroying the entire planet completely subverts that entire thing. It's just a mess. Like, this is just a mess of a movie. And I have such a hard time grasping what they were even trying to do here.
Yeah. I think it was just not very well thought out, frankly, on any level. I think somebody had this idea for dimension jumping, and they had some ideas for creepy things that could happen as a result of that. And I actually believe now, after thinking about it, that they wrote the movie around this idea of people on a space station with creepy things happening. Creepy, inexplicable things happening.
It was someone like us who likes this genre of movie and wanted to make this genre of movie, but didn't have a great idea, I think.
And maybe didn't have enough time to like. This is like what we were saying right now. Like, you could take the script and workshop it and like iterate on it and actually turn it into something that worked.
But the problem is you pretty much need a new script, right? Like the main story is all wrong. And the characters were fine, but they weren't great, so you might as well give them better arcs. So I don't know if you could really iterate on it.
So I'm curious if this was not squeezed into a Cloverfield package, do you think this would have been a good movie still?
No.
I mean, I think I'd probably have the same opinion of it, which is like, highly flawed movie with some creepy stuff that I thought was fine.
What did you guys think of Julius Onah's directing? Did you think, because this is a new guy, he's done some international films in Africa and had some success at some film festivals, but this is really his first big movie. Did you? I mean, I thought this movie looked okay. Like, it didn't cost a lot of money, but I thought the special effects were good. I thought the look of the space station was pretty good. I didn't have a problem with how it was directed.
I thought the direction was fine. To me, like, it's hard to comment on the directing of a movie that doesn't really have anything to say.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, maybe if this really isn't a criticism of him, but like maybe if he was a really great director, he could have taken a lackluster screenplay and told it in a way that still made it interesting. But I think that would have been difficult to do. But yeah, it seemed competently directed.
Yeah, there's a few parts that are pretty visually cool, like when they have to jump to the part of the ship that's tearing off.
Yeah,
like that,
I like that.
That's pretty high quality, and you buy that. I didn't like the intro to the movie. Like I forget exactly how things go. But like the thing,
it was the car scene.
That I was actually talking about the part where they're on the ship and like
the montage.
Time is, the montage. Yeah, the montage I felt was very artificial and made me very aware that I was watching a movie. It was distracting.
I actually didn't mind the montage. I thought it did a reasonably good job of like setting up that they'd been doing this for a while and had been failing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see the utility of it. I was like, all right, definitely where I'm watching a movie now, which is not where I want to be as I'm trying to like get into it.
Yeah, I understand that. I think I'm with Michael on this though. I didn't mind that. It was kind of like we need to show that they're desperate, so like let's have time pass a little bit.
I successfully got that message that they were desperate and disheartened.
I will say I wish the montage had like focused on rising tension between the crew members a little more, because I thought that was a little lacking. Like it's kind of implied that there's tension between them, but we don't really see it.
Well, they give you the one scene where the Russian guy, Volkov or something like that,
right?
Volkov, is just being a dick to the German guy, for seemingly no reason, just to like show that they're fighting, and ultimately that's never explained. It's just I guess the way that it ultimately has to be interpreted is like Schmidt is the scientist and it's his fault it doesn't work or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and also there's tensions back on Earth that we pay lip service to.
Between the Germans and the Russians. Yeah.
But we get very little idea of what's going on there. So I agree. It's tough to read. And if we had like, I'm trying to think of a way you do the montage while focusing on some of the other characters a bit more, because they focused on Ava Hamilton a lot in the montage because she's the main character and it's her story kind of. But if we had spent more of the time getting to see how the other characters interacted a lot, like I think going back to Sunshine, that's one thing I think that movie does a really great job of, is defining all this cast of characters and the interactions between all of them before the stuff starts to go wrong, so that we know what their relationships are prior to it, and then we see as those relationships are tested when shit starts going down. And I think this movie lacked that. That's
true. And like all the characters were explained kind of the minimum amount for you to kind of get who they are.
Yeah.
But the other Cloverfield movies were a way more in-depth study of characters.
Yeah.
And the setting of this movie had the potential to be that, but it wasn't really about that. It was more about the things that were happening, and that's the less interesting part. Like the captain character was pretty underutilized. Like he sacrificed himself at some point, but it's just like, oh, I guess he's the captain who sacrificed himself.
He was just the American no nonsense captain.
Yeah. So yeah, that was underutilized. Definitely a lot of there were some hints like that Schmidt and Tam had some sort of relationship. I like that they didn't explore that too much and that it was just subtle. I liked how Tam was characterized as just kind of like a no-nonsense engineer who was just fine with doing all of the things. But none of them were explored enough that you cared that much when they died. Yeah.
All right. Matt, do you have anything else you want to talk about Cloverfield Paradox?
Don't think so.
How
got
stupid,
all my gripes off my chest.
How stupid was the TV show about the conspiracy theorists who was like, you don't understand, it's the Cloverfield Paradox. We'll open the gates and demons will come to all timelines, which is just like, which is just like, hey, that explains why in 2008 there was a monster in New York, because the demons go to all timelines.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they felt like they needed to set up the fact that things could go horribly wrong, but it just kind of felt like, okay, but why?
Yeah, it was like, this is where the monsters come from. It opens, it's kind of like doing an Event Horizon thing. It's like we opened a portal to hell and now there's demons on Earth.
Yeah, if that reminds me of anything, it's actually Half-Life, where the premise is that there's like some colonizing alien intelligence that's making portals to Earth, and but this is less coherent than that, and much worse.
So guys, here's some trivia for you. The guy who did that, who was the guy talking about the Cloverfield Paradox on the TV as they were about to fire the the particle accelerator, was named Mark Stambler, and apparently he has the same last name as Howard Stambler, who was John Goodman in 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
And
good.
And Suzanne Cryer, who appeared as Leslie in 10 Cloverfield Lane, I don't know who that is, also appears as a brief cameo role as a newscaster who interviews Stambler.
Okay.
So there you go.
Wow.
I mean, that's fine. Like, sure, hide that stuff in there.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. Don't show it in our face, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a really disappointing movie that I just did not enjoy watching at all. And I get why you guys liked the parts of it you did, but
yeah, I wouldn't say I liked it, but I mean, it didn't offend me.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the effort. And the only reason it was like really disappointing is because the other two Cloverfields were so interesting. But science fiction is always something that you need to try. And like a lot of the time it's just not going to work because you're just kind of like, oh, what about this idea? And then you kind of realize maybe halfway through that it wasn't as good of an idea as you thought, or as interesting as you thought. But
yeah. So that is the Cloverfield Paradox. Michael, are you going to go see Overlord when it comes out this year?
I think so. Yeah, I probably will.
Unless it appears on Netflix. So
yeah, it depends on what the like trailer looks like, I guess. If it just like seems like a straight up action movie, then I won't see it. But
so Cloverfield, we got like 5 months notice for, but we didn't know anything about. 10 Cloverfield Lane, we found out about that movie a month before it came out. The Cloverfield Paradox, we found out that movie the day it came out. So this next one, is it already out?
Yeah. You're just going to be suddenly watching it.
They're not going to tell you it was a Cloverfield movie until like a month after it's released.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
I will say that what J.J. Abrams and Netflix did with this is basically brilliant. Like this is what he's been wanting to do the whole time, and it's what he's been working up to. This like he basically Beyonce'd a movie where he just dropped it suddenly and no one knew it was coming. And I think that's exactly what J.J. Abrams would love to do. So if this is his outlet to get to experiment like that, I'm there.
Yeah. I applaud the idea of it. It's just kind of fun. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we surprised people with a movie?
Yeah, especially in this day and age when so much of movie stuff is reported months and months in advance. For them to sneak up on you like that, it's great. And they had film Twitter all up and roar. Like Ava DuVernay, who has worked with Netflix on some stuff before, like tweeted before the Super Bowl started, film Twitter is going to go crazy today. And like everyone was like retweeting that and going nuts. Cause like, what does she mean? What does she mean? What's happening? And it was this. So it was exciting. It was just kind of like that excitement died as soon as everyone watched the movie.
Yeah, but that's fine. It's cool.
Yeah. All right, so that is the Cloverfield Paradox. And now, before we finish up, let's talk, guys, about what we have been watching.
What have you been watching? What have I been watching? Well, I asked you first, so you better tell me.
And Michael, how about you go first?
I watched the first couple episodes of a Netflix show called Altered Carbon.
That is the one where people switch bodies.
That's right. It's this weird future where you exist in like this little electronic stack thing in your spine, and you can like transfer to new bodies when you die, except for Catholics who don't do that. So it's a science fiction show, which I always enjoy. And it's got some cool ideas, but I'm not probably going to watch any more of it. It's got a lot of failures that have made me not really interested in it anymore.
Can you elaborate any, or without spoiling?
I think it's a mixture of like the main it doesn't make sense. Like the central premise of the show. This isn't really a spoiler because this is like what happens at the beginning of the first episode is the main character like died in some sort of vaguely rebellious thing in the past, and then he's brought back by a rich guy to like solve a crime, even though it's never really there's never really connection that like he's particularly good at solving crimes, and it's just like why did they bring this asshole back? And he's played by a really terrible actor, or at least he does a really bad job, and like a laughably bad acting is done here. And he's just kind of like a badass who doesn't deserve it. So
yeah,
I don't like that kind of character who's just kind of an action badass who tries to be overly cool, but there's no reason for it.
Yeah, that's Joel Kinnaman is the guy playing the lead. He played Alex Murphy in the RoboCop reboot and Rick Flag in Suicide Squad. So he's
got a pretty good portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a weirdly inconsistent portrayal.
You this is your thing too, right, Matt?
Yeah, this is also my thing, since the only things I've watched recently were the Cloverfield Paradox and the first 2 episodes of Altered Carbon.
I also only watched the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. You guys are making great choices.
Yeah, which like yet again, I give it a huge handicap or whatever, because it's science fiction and specifically it's cyberpunk, which I always enjoy, regardless of its quality. But I don't know if I'll keep watching this. I'm curious because like you can sort of see the shape of it in advance, because it's a noir detective story, but it's cyberpunk, which is also not original because that's what Neuromancer was, which was like the first ever cyberpunk story. So I like the visuals. I like some of the ideas.
Do you agree that the actor who plays the main character in the past was like way more appealing than who he's become?
Yes, he was
like just focus on whatever was happening in the past. I don't understand this detective thing that's happening now.
Yeah, well, that's another weird thing is like the backstory is being slow played to such an extent that I've stopped caring. Like instead of being like, what an interesting mystery, what is an envoy really? And it's like, no, they're not gonna they're gonna tell you eventually, but by that time you're not gonna care anymore. So
right,
cool. Yeah, I've watched the first episode of this, and I think I'm done. So it did not grip me at all. And I'm with you, Matt. Like I love this setting. There's shots in this that are frequently beautiful, but it feels so inert to me, and I just could not get into it at all.
Yeah, I like the side characters much more. Like I like the cop lady. I like the AI hotelier, whatever the word is.
The AI idea is kind of interesting. I don't get the cop lady either, though, because it's like, why is she following this guy? Why did she was on the case, but then she messed it up, and for some reason she thinks that the main character is up to something other than he's actually up to, even though he was just kind of revived accidentally by someone else. Like none of it makes any sense.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm probably yet again giving it too much credit, but I feel like some of these things are going to make sense at some point. Like it's all a trick. There's a trick somewhere, but I don't know. I'm probably
yeah. It's just disappointing because it's cyberpunk and Sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well.
All right.
Wish they'd make a Neuromancer show.
It's based on a novel, right? I think.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Neither of you have read that, I'm guessing.
No.
Okay. Well, I watched another movie that wasn't very good. I watched A Futile and Stupid Gesture. This is a David Wain movie that's a biopic about the creation of National Lampoon, the magazine, and the film empire, and its creator, Doug Kenny. This is so the whole concept of this thing is it's supposed to be like a send up of the biopic. So it's like totally upfront about the fact that none of the people portraying any of the famous comedians from the 70s look anything like them. It's like saying, oh yeah, we also hired all these other writers, but we didn't have time to talk about them. And then it has this one part where it flashes everything they changed to make the story better up on the screen. So it's kind of like trying to be this biopic deconstruction story. And I think it works relatively well. I don't know if you guys know David Wain and his works. He did Wet Hot American Summer, which is probably one of his most well-known things. He's also written other movies like Role Models and Wanderlust, and They Came Together. Like these like kind of sarcastic, funny type, like actual close to National Lampoonish kind of humor. So he was, I think, a perfect director for this. And it does some interesting things. Like Doug Kenny died, and they have someone playing an old version of Doug Kenny, even though he's dead. It's played by Martin Mull, which is very interesting, but it just doesn't work for me. It's just like it's trying to do this thing where it deconstructs the biopic, but it's still like falling into the same traps of it at the same time, and never really grabs you emotionally. And I think like ignores some of the most interesting parts about Doug Kenny and his life. So I don't know. Wasn't a big fan of it.
Okay. There's so many levels of meta here that I'm having trouble even understanding what this thing is.
Yeah, it's basically a biopic that's just fourth wall breaking. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any particular nostalgic attachment to the Lampoon movies either. I never really liked those that much. So I probably would be doubly uninterested.
I mean, I liked Animal House a lot, but I never really liked Caddyshack, and they're fine. Like I think the humor in this works a lot. Will Forte is playing Doug Kenny, and I think I never like watched interviews with Doug Kenny, so I don't know what he was like, but he's funny. David Wain directs a good movie. Like the pace of this movie moves pretty well. I just like they kind of gloss over the magazine part of everything very quickly, and that's the part I know the least amount. So I would have liked to learn more about what went into actually making this magazine like the big thing it was. Domhnall Gleeson plays his partner, and he's probably the best part of the movie. I think he's really, really great, and he leaves halfway through. It's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. Nothing great. It's on Netflix if you want to watch it. So
don't think I will.
Yeah, it was not a very glowing review from Scott, but
no.
If you're really into National Lampoon, I think you'll probably enjoy some stuff in it. But Joel McHale is doing a Chevy Chase impression that is not really Chevy Chase, but I don't really know what he's doing. I don't know. That's a lot of this. It's like some of them are impressions they're like trying, like the guy playing Bill Murray is like really trying hard to do a Bill Murray impression, and then Joel McHale's just doing whatever he wants and saying my name is Chevy Chase. It's weird.
That sounds confusing and poorly planned.
Yeah. I really like David Wain too. Like Wet Hot American Summer is really, really funny. I really enjoy it, and this was disappointing. That's A Futile and Stupid Gesture. It's on Netflix right now.
Okay.
And that is all we had for you guys this week. If you have any questions or comments or just want to say hello, you can reach out to us via email, dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com, or on Twitter @dailyplanetfilms. We do try to respond to the messages when you send them, so go ahead and talk to us.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Absolutely. We have tons tons of great content here and more things coming every day. You can find this show and all the other shows we do at dailyplanetfilms.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of the Daily Planet. You can pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep growing and keep making new stuff. We got tons of patron-exclusive content that you can take advantage of. So head on over to patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms and check it out.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Yeah. Michael, thanks so much for coming. It was fun.
Welcome.
It was always fun talking movies that you like or movies that I agree with you on. It's always fun to talk to you about that.
What about all those other movies?
It's less fun when we have to fight each other.
Oh. I like fighting with you, Scott.
It was a good time. It was a good time. Next week on the podcast, your favorite series is back, Michael. Black Panther, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film, is here, and we are going to talk about it. We're going to review it and talk in detail. Michael, have you bought your tickets for that one yet?
You know I've taken a moral stance on this franchise,
So
Scott.
you're going to see it like it's probably too late for the Thursday showing, but like Friday morning, right?
No. Maybe if I just kind of get tired of living, I'll go see that and the Han Solo movie on the same day.
Well,
just to kind of realize, just to kind of to confirm that there's no hope left, and then I'll end it all.
That's very traumatic.
Oh, God.
I am very excited to talk about Black Panther. The reviews have been great, and my expectations for this movie are very high, and I can't wait. So the Daily Planet podcast, sans Michael, will be back next week to talk about Black Panther. We will see you then.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday.